Now, she's laying here, she's not in pain even when that shoulder's back because she's that flexible. By the time I bring her in position, the shoulder's going to get more vertical. If I start it with too vertical, and as I roll her over, it's going to lay her on the top or point of the shoulder, on the front of the shoulder. That's too uncomfortable. So let's just take a PI. There's the PSS, the inferior board of the PSS. Pisiform, flat hand, just like that. Rest my hand here, bring her to me, just like this. Seam decrease, very little pressure on the proximal portion. I'm just touching here, my hand, you can see as Mark showed you too, the hand can slide in there. I'm distributing my weight and balance on the distal half of her thigh. At this juncture, I stretch your shoulder until I feel the stretch under my hand. I round it in position for the PI, get the arch of your back and set it. You got slack here, that's it, set it, boom, just like that. That's what I want. If I need more, I can get my torso and go, boom, just like that. If I need more, then I can drop down into the table like that. Right. For the PIEX, pushing that, I'll go to the lateral inferior board of that PSS, take the tissue, little lateral to medial, little I to S. Fingers again point down towards the table. I'll bring her over less than a lumbar position because I don't want to open that EX up. I'm real light on the side of her thigh for these EXs there on the upside when we're pushing. Stretch your shoulder, take the slack out here, and boom, and torque, just like that. See what my hand is doing? Torque it just like that. EX. PIEX push. The PIEX pull or the EX pull. Let's do the EX first. There's the PSS. You get underneath the tissue, bring it lateral to medial like that. Now she's already rolling over past 90 degrees to the table. So I'm going to tuck this under. It rolls my hand right underneath that pelvis. So I can start out with the pelvis at least at 90. I'll pull the tissue across like that. Rest my hand. Get my leg in position as a guide, turn my elbow. There we go, I get her past 90. Now I'll stretch, take the slack out here, there. Now we're right there. At this point, I want to come straight across for the EX. I want to ulnar deviate, and I want to extend my wrist. So I like the amplitude to come something like this. Right about there is where I like to set it if I can. If I can't get it with that, then I can add the kick to that rather than just the guide. As I do the kick, if this comes like that, this has to come along. See that? If I'm good right here and then I do this, I'm bad. Hurts your ribs, doesn't it, right there? So I need to bring this together and let it come as a unit. As I set that, that shoulder has to come along too. I'm balancing myself with my knee right against the table when I do that. Now, you don't have to, but that gives you a little bit better balance when you're doing this pull, focusing on your arm, doing the adjustment. PIEX, inferior lateral border of the PSS. So I'm coming across and bringing it up a little bit like that. Now I need to lean into her shoulder region with my arm like this. As I come across, I also have to arc the arm up like this. A little more awkward for us as the doc. As I'm leaning this way, it's getting my torso in the direction where I bring it across and up for the PI. All right? Questions about the PIEX, push or pull? The PI? Yeah.
How often do you see compound listings as opposed to simple listings? Like how often do you see PI or PIEX? Or what do you see more often?
I'd say probably 99% of the time you see a compound listing.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And percentage-wise, as far as if they're about even, at least half the time they're close to even, I would say probably. I've never taken any data on that. Has anybody ever kept records on that? Didn't think so. So, well, I say that it's a downside to this constant work. We should have, at this juncture, had literally hundreds of thousands of clinical data compiled, and that's a big failure on my part and my colleagues' part in this work, and going way back to the that would have been at least anecdotal for us. It would have been accepted in the evidence-based situation, but at least it would have been anecdotal for us, which clinical trials can point to a pretty good end or conclusion percentage-wise anyway. So most of the time it's going to be a combination of the two. Yeah. Okay, anybody else? Questions on the PIEX, or the PI, or the EX? I was going to ask me, could you push a straight EX? The answer is yes, you could. Wouldn't necessarily be the first choice. If you're real good at it, you get the lateral border of the PSS, bring them over, less than a lumbar, stretch them here, and very light on the contact on our thigh. Lateral to medial, take the slack out, and I have to think about lateral to medial and torquing. And that might work in a given case if we need to do that. Otherwise, typically we reach underneath it and pull that. Alrighty, let's go to the PI-IN. The PIN, I can push it with involved side up. I can pull it with involved side up. We're going to go on the medial inferior border of the PSS. Pisiform for the push. I'm going to reach around here like that, medial to lateral. Again, on the medial inferior border of the PSS. I've got my pisiform inside there. I can roll over as far or farther than the lumbar, protect my back a bit, get my elbow in position. I have a slight eye to west, elbow to wrist for the PI component. I am medial to lateral with my pisiform on the lateral aspect of the ala, contacting the PSIS on the medial inferior border. Stretch the shoulder and now see if there's any slack left. I'm pretty well ready to go. As I thrust, it's P to A for the PI. I'm medial to lateral for the IN already. And the torque is going to be downward towards your feet as I do that. I'm twisting my forearm and wrist as I do that for the IN component. That's your PI-IN push. So if you had an even distribution of PI5, IN5, your finger should point back probably towards the patient's iliac crest. If it's more of an IN, point it more back to the dot. If it's more of a PI, you can point it more up towards the spine. So PI2, IN5, I point more back to me. PI5, IN2, it could point more towards the patient's torso or spine. PI5, IN5, right across the iliac crest. This is a guide. Just common sense what you're trying to accomplish. Okay. PI, IN pull. Bring it closer to the edge like we do in all the pulls. Hook inside the PSS. 2 or 3 fingers on the inferior border of the PSS. Probably 2 is going to be enough right there. Bring her past the vertical plane. Now stretch her out. Take the slack out here. And we thrust. Feet away for the PI. We're already inside the PSIS on the inferior portion. That's the IN part, and as we thrust and kick, that opens it up, and we can torque with our fingers this way down towards the patient's feet. All right? So the kick right down into the table, and the pelvis is allowed to move a little bit more here because we don't want to kick it back so much and resist our own thrust. Although if this bottom hip comes up, this is still going to come forward for us. We'll be okay with that. That's your PI-IN pull. A straight IN pull will be very similar. And hooking is pulling it open and torquing at the same time. Now, we've taught you so far the rat hole and the wrist flexion setup like that. This works marvelous for your PUA, for your lumbars, for your sacrum, etc. When you start getting into this IN business, you'll see in the chapters where Gonson might have his hand a little bit more flat like this. And it's because he's not focusing so much on the PUA, he can get the IN open up just like that. If you have a good upper body strength, you can either use your adductors this way or you can tuck it in this way and use your biceps and pull like that. If you're having trouble with your fingertip pushes, no matter if it's lumbar or down the pelvis, because your upper body strength isn't quite what you'd like to have, if you just turn this elbow in and expose the antecubital fossa, using your biceps as your lever or your power right there like that, the lats get engaged, but you can get that same P to A using your rat hole or flat hand this way to make the correction a little bit more power for yourself probably. So if you want to get it with this, you can do it with this. Okay. All right, let's go to the ASIN. We talked about finding the PSS, going over 2 and down 3, there's our ASIN zone. Now, I normally would be skin on skin, so we won't be able to do it here today. There'd be a straight AS contact right there. If your wrist can extend, and you get that wrist to go up like that to where you keep your line of drive elbow to wrist down the shaft of the femur, that's what you would do with your fingers pointing this way. I can't manage that with this wrist, and so I'll just simply turn it around like this to get that corrected line of drive. So straight AS, I roll the patient over. I'm going P away down the shaft of the femur. Stretch her out and push just like that. P away, that gets the AS out of it. If I have an ASIN, I'll simply go medial to that, go medial to lateral, staying on the medial aspect of that ischial spine, we call it, over 2, down 3. Tissue pull medial to lateral, just like that. Bring her over, and elbow up here, down the shaft of the femur, stretch, and clump, just like that, and torque. As I go P away for the AS, I medial to lateral for the IN, and I also torque downward with that wrist and hand for the IN upright component. Your ASIN push. You're going to get those folks that are hard to set. If they're baby, you do the ASIN like that, and you can't get it with that push I just showed you. The closest we get to a pull for an ASIN would be to make the same contact, roll them over. Now I'll get my stabilization leg into position. You see how far I have to get over the patient. Stretch her out. Now I can kick and thrust at the same time. The same action with the medial to lateral, feet away, and then torque down towards the patient's feet with your palm, your bicycle. So that's technically a ASIN pull with the pisiform push contact versus fingertip. I saw Gonstead do that once in a while. I saw Dr. Alex do that on Gonstead's ASIN one time, real hard to move it. ASEX. PSS over 2, down 3 for the ischial spine AS contact. Lateral to medial like this with our tissue pull. Fingers can start to put a little bit of torque into the tissue there. Rolling them over, that's good. Here I have to thrust P away down the shaft of the femur for the AS. I have to go lateral to medial, elbow to wrist, plus torque, just like that, for the EX component. There we go. So slack comes out and set it, just like that. So the action, actually what you do with your hands, you push P away and torque at the same time for the EX. It's the same action you use on the PIEX, just your contact is a little different. And of course on the AS, going down the shaft of the femur, which gets to the S to I component. But I wouldn't worry too much about that S to I. Once you're at the bottom end of that articulation, you thrust P away, that's going to go S to I, like that. Reduce the AS component. On the PI, of course, we have a little bit of IOS, the inferior border of the PSS, so we have to think about that. Hand action, we're thrusting directly in, and torquing is the same. ASCX pull, here's where we would drag the tissue downward and then across, ending up with our pisiform on the lateral aspect of that ischial spine, which again we find PSS over 2, down 3. We go in the lateral aspect, bring it across, so I end up with my forearm cradling her glutes, just like this. Get my leg in position, and again I have to lean upward a little bit towards their head, and I'll take the slack out of the pelvis. Stretch the shoulder, so when I make the set, it's arc, set like that, so I get everything to come down for the AS and across for the EX, pretty much simultaneous. And that won't work unless we have all the slack taken out of that tissue down and across. Questions? That's the whole pelvis. Kind of crammed all in one. But everybody's on board with the lessons and stuff, right? We've been through this before, right?